What's up, everybody? Thralls Mellow here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin, John.
Yes, he is, even in those glasses.
I love them. I don't know what anybody is talking about. I think they look fucking amazing.
The bar for amazing has been lowered, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm shielded from the sun, regardless of what you think they look like.
And common sense. But anyway, we are back with another album review, and this time we're going to go a little bit more into the underground because this one kind of popped up on our radar. I was like, hey, you know what? Why not?
Yeah.
So we're going to go over the debut EP from Reaping Flesh, Abyss of Existence. This comes out also on the 16th of June on Redefining Darkness Records. This band formed in 2022, so very new band, in Italy. This is, again, their debut EP, and this is some straight-up old-school death metal, like very much lurking in that late 80s and early 90s realm. Lots of Florida tropes in here, but just kind of like just death metal in general. In terms of the members on here, the only person that really kind of popped up on my radar was they have one of the ex-guitarists from the band Distrage, which is a quirky metalcore band, and this is definitely not that. In fact, I dare this album to be more like 90s death metal.
Yeah, or late 80s. Like it really, really lies right in that area. It makes its home, we'll say, in like 1988 to 1991.
Yeah, that sounds about right. You get a lot of the sort of like transitional period between like that heavier style of thrash that would kind of, eventually become death metal in terms of a style, and then like just a lot of Florida tropes, and just kind of, again, 90s death metal in general. Lots of Entombed, Malevolent Creation, because there's definitely a big thrashy bite to it, but there's definitely a lot of death on here. Now it opens up with the intro, which, again, I'm not like a big intro person, and an intro on an EP, maybe not the most necessary, but it's an interesting intro. Like, it has like dreary horror synths, but it's more of a gothic vibe, and then a clean melody sort of comes in, like it's,
a little bass melody.
Yeah, it's creepy, it's unsettling. Then you get these like weird rhythmic hits. It sounds like someone banging from the inside of a fucking coffin.
If someone is knocking, I wouldn't either let them out or in, depending on where that knock is coming from. But it's a big knock. It could be the cops.
Could be the cops. Or a zombie cop.
Oh, that would suck.
But that curtails into Elements of Life, which immediately just kind of kicks in with thrashy machine gun riffs, blast beats sort of alternating between D beats, and production-wise, it's an interesting mix in terms of like the styles, because some things sound more modern than others on here. Like, all right, the guitars sound like they were plucked right out from like a fucking 90s death metal album.
Yeah, like a B-side to Leprosy, I'm gonna be honest. It's right in there, but the drums sound modern. And the modern drums with this early 90s guitar tone, initially I didn't think it meshed real well. The drums either sounded too loud or the guitar sounded too quiet. As the record goes on, it kind of evens out a little bit, but that immediate hit of those two things didn't sit right with me.
Yeah, the guitars are, in terms of the tone, like very muddy, kind of just gross sounding, like, 90s death metal. Like, a lot of the riffs definitely reminded me of like Left Hand Path, except minus the, giant HM2 tone, which, I don't know, like, honestly, I don't know if it would really work on here, just because there's a lot of like just thrashy machine gun riffs on here, and I think that thrashy tone kind of lends to it. But as this album goes on, it really starts opening up in terms of the style. Like, thrashy death metal is definitely the biggest flavor on here, but there are elements of like, kind of more like creepy death doom on here, and some absolutely bold-faced like Leprosy worship. Pit of Eternity, that opening crawling riff and off-time rhythm, we just started playing Leprosy behind us when we started this video. It's like, that is exactly it.
100% it, yep. And that song too is about 2 minutes and 44 seconds, a little barn burner, but yeah, that song. And then Fear Without Shape, too, the last song. That's death worship as good as it comes.
A little bit of, like, death doom on there, like a kind of a sped-up hooded menace. But when it came down to those crawling harmonies, which there's some really, really good guitar harmonies on here. They're very sinister and very dark sounding. Like, this has, like, kind of a good evil quality to it. But these harmonies sound, like, tragic and very somber, and then you have these desperate pleading vocals that are on top of them. Like, it really has a really just interesting atmosphere to it, and it kind of is like probably the most different track in here because a lot of this is very aggressive and evil. This one sounds more forlorn.
Although I wouldn't state that this record is packed full of things like groove. They use melody and harmony a lot to accent moments in the song. There wasn't a lot of chug. There was a little bit here and there, but there wasn't a lot of it. Mostly they ride on these melodies all throughout. And
speed. Like, this is a pretty fast-paced EP. Like, the drums are constantly going at like a thrashy D beat or blast beats. You do get some like good groovy pockets every now and then. Especially on Lies of Existence, there's a really awesome breakdown there, and it's like the first harmony that really caught me. So instead of just like chugging it up, they throw in a breakdown that actually has like a really clever, sinister harmony on top of it. And again, it's a thing I've definitely heard before. Like, this is definitely a throwback sort of listen, unless you listen to like 90s death metal all the time, which I do. So it isn't that much of a throwback. It's more of like little toss right behind me and I'll pick it back up later. I really like the vocals on here. It's, again, a very classic delivery, like in terms of like 90s death metal. Like, they're not like super low burps. They're not screams. It's kind of that mid-register. It's ghastly. It sounds a little spooky at times. And again, he'll change gears a little bit from a standard sort of like roar to, again, these more ghastly vocals that pop up, like namely at the end of Elements of Life. That's where you first really hear them. And then they're kind of used intermittently in between. And they work effectively in terms of like shifting the mood, because you have like these more kind of doomy, sullen moments on here that kind of, contrast the more aggressive, like just full tilt fucking machine gun thrashy riffing.
Now, it's very much also in the vein of like early Florida death metal. Like, immediately I caught Morbid Angel vibes, but like early Morbid Angel, like Covenant, Blessed Are the Sick, even a little bit of Altars. We won't get into Altars.
We always seem to get into Altars.
Had that kind of vibe, and then like a really raw type of feel, like Celtic Frost was.
Yeah. There's moments on here where you kind of hear, again, it's that weird sort of transitional period, like the birth of death metal sort of sound, where it's still holding on to its main influences and still kind of forging the death metal sound. So yeah, Celtic Frost makes sense, because you hear it in those slow, sort of more minimalistic riffs, like they're just heavy, big fucking chords, and then you kind of let a weird lead melody sort of dance on top of it.
And that's a lot of what this was too. Like, it's not riffy in the sense of, say, like we just reviewed Creeping Death. Like, it's not riffy in that sense. It's more of like riffs are peppered in lightly, but mostly it uses the harmony and the melody to express all the motives in the song.
Pretty much this is just flat out old school death metal. And I know there's like a fuck ton of bands out there doing it right now, but it's one of those, like, when you hear it done well, especially with such a love of the source material, you're like, yeah, dude, that kind of sounds like the shit that I grew up with. Like, we were even joking around, like, this sounds like something I would have picked up when I was a teenager just based on the fucking logo and the album cover.
This looks creepy and cool. That logo's pretty neat.
There's gross skulls on it. Fuck yeah, I want to buy it. Hopefully my ma doesn't fucking see this one, because she'll just ask questions again. Like, what the hell are you into?
Or be like my mom and straight throw it away. You learn to hide things as a kid.
Parents find them, though. That's the...
They do, until you find the really good hiding spaces. Kids, if you're having this problem at home, if you take out your dresser drawer, there's a little area that's about the height of a CD that goes in between where the track of the drawer is and the actual bottom of the next drawer. And if you slide it right in there, nobody will ever know. I can say that now because I'm in my 40s.
Pretty sure we put the More You Know Rambo right across the top there.
More you know.
But yeah, as far as like any negatives on here, my only gripes would be is like, it sounds like a ton of bands that I have listened to time and time again that have been, pretty much huge bands in terms of establishing death metal. Mm-hmm. That isn't necessarily a knock, though, because I think it's done really well. For me, like, the thing that really stood out to me was, atmosphere and the harmonies. The harmonies in here are great. Like, they really create that sinister mood across, I would say, most of this EP, and they're doing that without like throwing in like a ton of synths or samples or anything like that.
Right, they weren't throwing in flashy things just to be flashy. Like it stuck to its roots, and pretty heavily for that matter.
I mean, I would say maybe the intro is a little bit extra, but it does have sort of a unique sort of lead in with the whole banging and such.
Well,
like
and it sets up the tone and the mood for this album. Like, because the opening song was very like ominous and dark, and it sets up that feeling and that emotion for the rest of the album, which still holds on to that ominous and dark feel.
Yeah. I mean, even though like Elements of Life really explodes right out of the gate, you know, blast beats and thrashy riffs and shit like that, it does settle back down into that sort of creepy, slower vibe on the bridge, and the lead section on there sounds especially ominous.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think this is just really well done old school death metal. And overall, I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. There really isn't much filler. Like, yeah, I get issues with intros, especially on EPs, because that feels like, you know, that's too much for an EP. Like, it's a short offering. You don't need an intro. But it wasn't that bad. But overall, I like the energy in here. It definitely captures that old school vibe. Even with the interesting production, the guitar tone being more dirty, and it has that flat out 90s sound to it. And the vocals being more of like a pained fucking growl and gasp. It's a solid listen. Like, if you're a big fan of death, which, I mean, if you like death metal, you probably should be. Obituary, Malevolent Creation, Entombed a little bit too. Like, it's definitely got a little bit of the like D-beat gnarliness to it. Check this out. It's a solid fucking EP. I'm definitely gonna order this one here soon.
I'm going to give it a 3. And, I mean, notably, mostly it's just because it's an EP. There's not a whole lot of material to work with. But the material that is there is actually really solid. And even the gripes I had in the beginning about the mix kind of went away because it's entertaining. From song to song, it crawls through these pits of dark melodies and harmonies. And it kept my attention rolling. I think the drum work is really cool, albeit it's the most modern sounding thing on this album. He does a really good job. Songs like Pit of Eternity and Fear Without Shape, those were both doomier and darker and heavier, and I really like that. I could knock intros too, especially with 6 songs and such a short EP, like maybe, you know, not put that in there. But then I go back to the thought of the idea where it is ominous and dark and creepy, as is the rest of this record. They did a really good job honing in on what I believe, what both of us believe they're influenced by. Early Morbid Angel, Death, Celtic Frost, you know, Entombed. They did a good job to take what could have been a modern sounding record and drag it back 30 years to the 90s where all this stuff started. They did a good job of recreating that magic.
So, if you enjoyed this review and Jammin' John's glasses, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, definitely subscribe because we do shit like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. That is our website where our store is. Where we will definitely have shirts eventually, and we will announce that. But also, our Patreon's there, and you can just click the link there. And we also have a giveaway going on for when we eventually hit 15,000 subscribers, which we're well under the 200 mark. In fact, we're close to the 100 mark, so not much time left. So all you got to do is click the link down below for the video, comment on it, and you are entered. Once we hit the magic number, I'm going to do a little comment randomizer, and one of you lucky metalheads out there is going to win a sack of 11 CDs. I'll announce it in the video, and we'll all celebrate being well above any mark that I ever fucking had for this channel. Because, yeah, 15,000 subscribers is insane, and we owe it all to you. Thank you guys so fucking much.
Yeah, to be honest, I thought when we hit 1,000 that was cool, and I thought, like, okay, that's pretty notable. And then the number kept climbing, and then I remember when we hit 10, and I was like, what? And then now 15. It's nuts. Thank you guys so much for continuing to watch and enjoying things like my sunglasses. I fucking love them. Fuck you. No, but thank you all for tuning in and commenting and doing all the wonderful things that you guys do to make this channel a thing, because without you guys, Thralls of Metal would just be 2 dickheads in the basement talking about music, which
it still is.
We were going to do anyway, and it still is kind of that. But now you've given us a platform and a place to go, and thank you very much for that. It is grossly appreciated.
So once again, thank you all so much, and we will catch you later.